All right. Hi, everyone. A very good evening. I'm so sorry I'm a little late. There was some tech issue, and that's why I couldn't reach you on time. I hope all of you have been consistently reading, all of you have been practicing RC passages through the sessions that we are conducting. Right, so this is our seventh session. Our sixth session happened on the Rodha portal, as I announced. Right, so this is what we are going to do today. Going to do from now on. Our Thursday sessions will be on YouTube, and our Tuesday sessions will be on the Rodha portal. Right, all right. Give me a hi. Hello. How are you doing? Yes. How is everyone? Good evening, Nandini. Hi, Sam. Okay. So we are good to go. Now, one thing that you already know, I have told this to you multiple times now, right? These are the news sources of your cat RCs from 2020 to 24, and I also tell you that my endeavor is to cover these sources with you. So today's article comes from the Wall Street Journal. I really had to work hard in order to get access to this article because Wall Street Journal articles, they are paid. You have to buy their subscription. So yeah, I went for an institutional access and everything anyway. So this is a really interesting article. It encapsulates what is the impact of the events that are happening in the world in terms of politics on the economies, on global economies, on the economies of some western countries, and what it really means for investors money. Right, so a very interesting article from the genre economics. Right, and uh, why it is important, because if you again pick up your previous year papers, economics has been a genre that has been asked very consistently. Right, so that's what makes this important. Okay, I'm good, light, thank you for asking. Good evening, Pritikana. Okay, so one thing that I want to tell you before we begin, see, your sources, right? So the Wall Street Journal, if you again pick up your CAT previous year papers, you will see that the RC passage that was asked, based on this source, didn't actually deal with economics or business. So it's not necessary that just because a source is called the Economist, the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, they will only frame RC passages from these sections of that source. It's not necessary, right? And that's why even when you're reading one particular source, I recommend diverse reading. Okay, so for instance, here you can see multiple tabs, right? Latest, world, business, US, politics, etc., etc. Right? So my suggestion is don't just click on one tab every time you read. So let's say don't just click on economy. Similarly, in the Guardian, you'll have different tabs. So the ultimate suggestion is that don't stick to just one tab, go for a diverse reading even within one source. Right? So if you see, I clicked on the tab world here, and there is coverage by country, and in fact it offers more about the world, right? So it offers about probably new science inventions, anthropology, biology. So there is a lot more to the Wall Street Journal than just articles on economics and business. And that would hold true for any magazine also. For instance, Scientific American, it's not that it will have articles only on science, right? So it will also have interdisciplinary article, and my suggestion is read such articles, especially the ones that are interdisciplinary in nature. That means they touch upon multiple genres. So for instance, our passage today is not just about economics, it also touches upon politics. Right, so interdisciplinary. Okay. Now, the word count is 602. I could not shorten it beyond this, right? Because I wanted to give you a complete picture of what really is happening in the world economy right now and the impact of politics on it. Okay. So, this was the picture for the article that we are discussing. Can anyone tell me what do you make of it? What do you interpret from this picture? Globalization, okay. So we are talking about the global economy, all right. But what does this money symbol mean here? Dollar and other currencies. So probably we are going to talk about money, okay. Maybe about currencies, all right. What else? The macroeconomic aspects. Very good. We are going to talk about the macroeconomic aspects. What does that mean? So one is microeconomics, right? One subgenre of economics, one subfield of economics is microeconomics, which talks about household income, household savings, households. And then there is macroeconomics that talks about the economy as a whole, right? It talks about the big aspects, GDP, GNP, things like that, right? So yes, probably we are going to focus on the macroeconomic aspects. Great. So you are able to get an idea as to what we are going to discuss, right? And I think I have also given you some idea earlier. Okay, then let's begin. We'll read slide by slide and we'll comprehend stuff. I have highlighted some of the words that I thought were important or difficult. We'll discuss them, right? And yes, there are questions after this. Okay, so our first paragraph, the opening paragraph, I always tell you read it relatively more carefully, dive into it slowly, understand it. It may contain important stuff, as it usually does. Read. Okay, so what are your queries based on this first, paragraph? Anything that you did not understand? When we grapple with something, investors across the globe need to grapple with. They need to cope with. Okay, they need to come to terms with three big questions, and none have simple answers, right? So, what are the three big questions? These three: the most important, the most immediate, and in between. So, I think this is pretty much a summary of what is going to come in the paragraph, in the passage, right, in the article here. Because I am sure the author, if they have raised these questions or if they have said that these are the important issues, they are going to talk about it further, right? That's the idea. Now, what is Federal Reserve? What is Federal Reserve? So just like India has RBI, the US has Federal Reserve. It's their central bank, right? So this is common knowledge. This is something that you should know. Deglobalization. I think we can guess the meaning. Deglobalization. So globalization is opening up a country to the rest of the world, right? The connecting, the connection between various countries, the increasing connections. So deglobalization would be moving in the opposite direction, right? The closing of a country to the rest of the world, right? Country first approach. Perfect, perfect. Light. So, now that this paragraph is clear to you, you know that we are going to talk about these three issues, right? So, global alliances. What are alliances? Any examples of some global alliances that we have in the world today? The most basic example, the UN, United Nations भी तो alliance ही है एक तरह से, isn't it? And number of others, NATO, very popular, yes, these days. So NATO is an alliance, and a lot of others as well, right? We have some that are specific to Southeast Asia, we have some that are specific to Asia, some that are Western entirely. So, yes, a lot of alliances. Now, tariffs basically are tariffs, Asian, yes, BIMSTEC, absolutely, SARC, yes, absolutely. So, now, uh, what are tariffs? Right, when we, let's say, go to a hotel, we ask for the tariff, yeah, or we check the tariffs in advance usually. So, here, however, this is not the meaning. Here, the meaning is import and export taxes. Taxes on import and export. Okay, some duties and tariffs that are, some duties and taxes that are imposed. Right. So, this is, I'm just setting a background for you so that in case somebody is not from an economics background, they don't feel lost. Right. So, I think now that this paragraph is clear to you, we have spent ample time on it, we can now proceed. Okay, read these three paragraphs and then I have a question. Read. Supply shocks such as tariffs. What is a supply shock? So, in economics, there are supply shocks, there are demand shocks. So, basically, any event that decreases the supply of a product, okay, drastically, or the supply in the economy drastically, right? Economy में चीज़ों की supply, goods की supply अगर एकदम से decrease हो जाए, that is a supply shock, right? So, that's what we are talking about here. Demand shock में demand decrease हो जाती है, that's it. So what happens when tariffs are imposed? When you'll impose taxes on imports and exports, the product's price will increase, right? The product's price will increase, and moreover, not only will the price increase, it's also quite possible that some of the manufacturers, they won't sell in your country. They may choose to not sell in your country. Right. It is also possible that if you impose tariffs on their materials, on the materials that they have, they may not even be able to produce as much as they were producing. So, tariff is a very multifaceted concept. And uh, we shouldn't, on one day simply decide as the president that yes, I'm going to impose tariffs. It has a lot of fallouts, which we are going to see in this article. So there are going to be price increases. The price of the product is definitely going to increase. So it says that traditionally, central banks don't worry about this a lot because the price increases are a one off. The price increases are a one off. One off means it happens just once. It's not like the prices will go on increasing. Right? That would allow them. Now there are a number of concepts here. That's why I highlighted this. That would allow them to cut interest rates to try to support the economy, which would also reduce the damage to stocks. So, three things here. That would allow them to cut interest rates to try to support the economy. So, my first question, how will cutting interest rates support the economy? Yes, if the central bank of a country cuts the interest rates prevailing in the country, the rate for loans, the rate for savings, investments, right? So अगर उनके इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कम हो जाते हैं तो उससे इकोनॉमी कैसे सपोर्ट होगी? यस. Tell me. Important for you as future managers to know this. So, if interest rates go down, what happens? In a way, borrowing money becomes cheaper for you. Borrowing money is now cheaper, isn't it? So, as a result, you're able to borrow more. Yes, and you're able to spend that money. Similarly, for businesses, right now I was talking about you as an individual. For businesses, if borrowing money becomes cheaper, they'll be able to produce more. Right? So, what is happening? Economic activity is being boosted. No, when you spend, economic activity boosts, consumption increases. Here, production is increasing. So, that is how the economy is being supported. Right? All right. I want more responses from you as well. Okay, yes. So I've got Vikash's message. Lending becomes more difficult. Is it? If interest rates reduce, lending becomes easier. Okay, lending in the sense borrowing becomes easier. I understand. Probably you are saying that as a lender, you would not want to lend. You would not want to lend that money. Maybe you are trying to say that. You would rather spend that money instead of lending it, कि कुछ मिल ही नहीं रहा. So again, आप spending की तरफ जाओगे. Right? Okay, so yes, if I look from a savers or investors viewpoint, it does not now make sense. It does not make sense to actually lend that money. You would rather use it for other purposes. Yes, you would rather perhaps spend it rather than you know uh, putting it in fixed deposits. You would rather go to अच्छा अगर अब आप एफडी में नहीं डाल रहे क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट रेट कम मिल रहा है तो आप कहाँ जाओगे अब वेयर वुड यू गो you would probably go towards the share market, the stock market, isn't it? Because you'll feel, oh, fixed income products, these products are giving me such low return. FDs में इतना कम interest मिल रहा है. Let me instead invest in the stock market. So that would also reduce damage to stocks, right? अभी stocks के अगर prices low हैं, एकदम से लोग आके invest करने लग जाएंगे, their demand will go up and their prices will go up. Right? Okay. Perfect. But if consumers and businesses think price increases will be repeated, the Fed will worry. अगर अब consumers और businesses को लग रहा है कि जो products के prices हैं, the products on which tariff have been imposed, their price increases will be repeated, the Fed will worry that those expectations alone could lead to more inflation. So first things first, why would the consumers and businesses think? Now this is a question, take your time, think about it. Why do you think the consumers and businesses would think that price increases will be repeated? Price increases will be repeated कि जो ये products जिनके अभी price increase हुए tariff से मे बी वो further increase होंगे. Why would the consumers and businesses think that? Due to more demand. Is it? The product has just become more expensive. As a consumer, I would not demand such a product on which there is a higher import duty. Absolutely, Sam. Yes. So Sam has got it right. See, whenever one country imposes tariffs, so right now US is threatening that. In fact, I think they will come into effect 6th or 7th March se tha na. So yeah. So Canada also said, we'll also impose tariffs in return. China also said we'll also impose tariffs in return. So this might create a tariff war. And as a result, more and more tariffs can be slapped on each other. And that's why these price increases might be repeated. Okay. So absolutely correct, Sam. Okay, so but if consumers and businesses think price increases will be repeated, the central bank will worry that those expectations alone could lead to more inflation. Okay, so I want you to do this homework. I want you to find out something. Okay, the self-prophesying effect when it comes to inflation. or when it comes to price increase, whatever you want to call it. Search about it, what it is. Okay? And we'll discuss in our next class. Right, so expectations alone could lead to more inflation and therefore the Fed will be less willing to cut rates. Because rate cut से क्या होगा? Rate cut से इन्फ्लेशन हो सकता है. बिकॉज रेट कट करेंगे तो क्या हो रहा है, मार्केट में मनी सप्लाई इंक्रीज हो रहा है ना, कंज्यूमर्स आर एबल टू स्पेंड मोर, द मनी सप्लाई इन द इकोनॉमी इज इंक्रीजिंग एंड व्हेन द सप्लाई ऑफ मनी इंक्रीजेस, when the supply of money increases, what happens? People spend more. जब लोग प्रोडक्ट्स ज़्यादा डिमांड करने लगेंगे, प्रोडक्ट्स का डिमांड बढ़ गया तो उनका प्राइस बढ़ सकता है. इट माइट लीड टू मोर inflation. Am I making sense so far? Anybody who feels this is getting technical? It's pretty intuitive in my opinion, but then my opinion could be wrong. So you tell me. अभी तक सब क्लियर है सबको? Correct, Vikash. Absolutely. Okay. Perfect then. For now, traders are betting. For now, traders, stock traders, जो share market में trade करते हैं, they are betting that the Fed will be more focused on the economy. That Fed is likely to cut interest rates. For now, that's what they are predicting. Okay, and cut. But the author ends this on a question. The author ends this discussion on a question. But will the Fed really be willing to cut even as tariffs push inflation up? सी अगर हम देर इज अ चॉइस, या तो हम इन्फ्लेशन मैनेज कर सकते हैं इकोनॉमी में एज द सेंट्रल बैंक हैज़ अ चॉइस. आइदर इट कैन मैनेज इन्फ्लेशन इन एन इकोनॉमी or it can boost growth in an economy. These are things that you should know. So when the focus is on boosting growth, the Fed will cut interest rates, which is what everyone wants. Businesses especially want this, right? But when its focus is on managing inflation, it may either keep them constant or it may even increase the interest rates, which is what especially people who trade in the stock market, investors, they especially fear this. Stock investors, right? Okay. So now let's come to the next passage, the next slide. I think it's easy. There are just certain terms that we'll discuss briefly here, right? And I would encourage you to read more about them. But yes, first let's read these 3 paragraphs. Okay. Let me know once you finish. Done. Knock, knock. Okay, perfect, perfect. So now see, it's a very structured passage, a very structured article. Um, Earlier we were talking about the short term, right? Now we come to the long term, the long run. And in the very beginning, the author started with in Trump's era. So of course it's going to discuss Trump, right? And that is what is happening here. So, new global alliances threaten the post Soviet order. What is the post Soviet order? What does this term mean? Hmm. So, there are certain terms here. Let's discuss them. Post Soviet order. It's talking about Soviet Union, right? The USSR. So, after World War II ended, there were two major ideologies that prevailed. Two major ideologies of politics and economy: capitalism and communism. Right? Now, Russia was a big proponent of communism. It was a Russia, I mean, back then the Soviet Union, let's call it the Soviet Union. Right? So, the Soviet Union was a communist nation and they wanted to spread communism. Whereas various Western countries like the US, UK, and pretty much the entire Western Europe, they were believers of capitalism, right? Democracy. They were believers of capitalism and democracy. So, this created a rift between these powers and the Soviet Union, to the extent that Germany was largely, after World War II, Germany faced massive economic degradation, and of course its politics was also in turmoil, right? World War II पार्टली तो हिटलर की वजह से ही हुआ था ना, मतलब काफ़ी कुछ हिटलर की वजह से ही हुआ था। तो उसके बाद वहाँ पर बहुत ज़्यादा डिस्ट्रक्शन हो गया था और इन सब ने मिलके सोचा हम इनका फेट डिसाइड करेंगे जर्मन्स का अब, ठीक है। So, what they did, they ended up dividing Berlin, which was the capital of which is the capital of Germany, right, into East Berlin and West Berlin. तो अब ये क्यों हुआ? क्योंकि they were not able to agree as to what kind of a government should form in Germany. क्या हम इन्होंने कहा कि डेमोक्रेसी लेके आते हैं, इन्होंने कहा नहीं कम्युनिज्म लेके आते हैं। तो ईस्ट बर्लिन पर अब ये राज करने लग गए and these guys started governing West Berlin. Okay, and it was not a very straightforward east west division, it was quite complicated. You can search the map of the time, right? So, what happened? The tensions escalated. A lot of people, they wanted to move here. They wanted democracy because they had seen Hitler already, right? They didn't want any sort of authoritarianism anymore. So people started moving here, right? They very surreptitiously would cross to West Berlin. In order to stop that, a wall was constructed, which was called the Berlin Wall. Okay, so this is what the Berlin Wall means. Now this went on for quite a while, right? It started after World War II ended, right, 1949, and this went on till 1989. Okay, तो तब तक ईस्ट बर्लिन वेस्ट बर्लिन अलग अलग थे. But eventually what happened was that there was a lot of dissonance within the Soviet Union. इनकी जो कंट्रीज थी आपस में उसमें बहुत प्रोटेस्ट एंड ऑल होने लगे. दे स्टार्टेड रिजेक्टिंग द अथॉरिटेरियन कम्युनिज्म. बेसिकली तो बहुत ज़्यादा अथॉरिटेरियन पावर्स थी ना यहाँ पे, स्टालिन एंड ऑल द अदर पीपल. सो अब मैं उतना डेप्थ में नहीं जाऊँगी, इसमें मिखेल गॉर्बेचेव इन सब का भी रोल है. यू शुड रीड अबाउट दिस गाइज. बट अल्टीमेटली प्रोटेस्ट हुए, ये वीकन होने लग गया, ठीक है. एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दीज प्रोटेस्ट द बर्लिन वॉल फेल in 1989 and that is said to be the beginning of the end of the USSR. तो धीरे धीरे फिर 1991 में USSR भी कोलैप्स हो गया. ओके, तो अब जब तक ये सब चल रहा था ना, दिस पीरियड वॉज कॉल्ड द कोल्ड वॉर. आई एम श्योर you've read about it in your social studies books, recall them. So this period was called the cold war because ऐसा हो गया कि आर्म्स के साथ कोई वॉर नहीं कर रहा था, वेपन्स नहीं यूज हो रहे थे, बट देयर वर कैंप्स. सो सम पीपल वर इन द यूएसएसआर कैंप, सम पीपल वर इन द दिस वेस्टर्न पावर्स कैंप, राइट. इंडिया नॉन अलाइंड था. इंडिया ने कहा मैं किसी की साइड नहीं ले रहा. इंडिया वॉज नॉन अलाइंड, राइट. सो दैट इज वॉट वॉज नॉन अलाइनमेंट. तो अब जब ये कोलैप्स हुआ, so this is called the end of, this actually marked the end of the cold war as well, right. जब यूएसएसआर कोलैप्स हुआ, अल्टीमेटली पावर वीकन हो गया उसका, कोल्ड वॉर इन अ वे एंडेड, राइट. एंड बहुत सारी जो ये वाली कंट्रीज थी विद इन द सोवियत यूनियन, ये भी डेमोक्रेसी की तरफ चली गई. एंड सोवियत यूनियन एट दैट टाइम कंट्रोल्ड अ लॉट ऑफ ईस्टर्न यूरोप ऑल्सो इनडायरेक्टली. Those countries also went towards democracy and capitalism. So that is the post-Soviet order, where there aren't these camps, okay, where the USSR is not controlling some nations indirectly, and they are not controlling any nations either. ठीक है, okay. So I wanted to go a bit into it because इसका आगे भी significance है हमारे article में. What is NATO? Yes, I think your generation should absolutely know what NATO is. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Hanji, what is NATO? What kind of an alliance is it? Is it an economic alliance? It is a Western military alliance. ओके. अभी रशिया यूक्रेन में जो वॉर है, अ लॉट ऑफ इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ नेटो. नेटो वॉज अगेन फॉर्म्ड इन 1949 बिकॉज दीज वेस्टर्न पावर्स दे वॉन्टेड टू काउंटर कम्युनिस्ट अग्रेशन, सोवियत यूनियंस अग्रेशन. तो इन्होंने आपस में एक अलायंस बनाया सबने मिलके, यूएस, यूके, फ्रांस, अभी 32 मेंबर्स हैं इसके. तो इन्होंने एक अलायंस बनाया दैट लेट्स जॉइन हैंड्स एंड एनी अटैक on one of us will be considered an attack on all of us. So that is NATO. It's a military alliance. Okay. Yes, Shivansh, please go ahead. Right. All right. So these are the three terms, and the author fears that there might be a new multi-front cold war. कि अब जो चल रहा है ना, जैसे जैसे चीज़ें जा रही हैं, the way things are going, we might actually be facing a new cold war wherein there won't be just two camps. There will be multiple camps. So probably one camp will be China's, right? One camp will be Russia's, one will be US's. So multiple camps. And I'll come to rearmament also. Yes. So here I'm saying that they are threatening these global alliances, these new global alliances. For instance, the US actually siding with Russia. US and Russia are always fighting. Now Trump is suddenly siding with Russia, right? And even North Korea against Ukraine. And this is such a powerful message to send. And that's why the entire Europe is now thinking we need to amp up our weapons. We need to become military powers. The world is becoming militarized under Trump, right? कि अब हमें सबको अपना अपना देखना पड़ेगा. NATO is not enough, right? So, and for that, for weapons, for buying weapons, you need money, right? So new borrowing under discussion by the European Commission. The European Commission is thinking, let's buy new weapons. Germany is thinking, let's buy new weapons. And that for that, they will have to borrow hundreds of billions of euros. Okay, so politics has economic consequences. Economics has political consequences. So it says, since the Berlin Wall fell, we've lived through almost half a century of preferring butter to guns. Interesting metaphor, right? We prefer economics to fighting. We prefer doing business, we prefer livelihoods to actually fighting, right? That's the whole reason why, the EU is functioning relatively peacefully, because सब अपने अपने economic interest को preference दे रहे हैं. With the rise of China and with the US no longer seen as a reliable ally, guns will again take priority. Okay, restructuring the economy, trade and tax systems to replace consumption with defense spending. Till now, the focus was on consumption spending, but now it will come to defense spending, probably. And this will be politically contentious. What is contentious? Yes, Shakti Pradarshan. Absolutely. Contentious, controversial. This will, of course, be politically controversial. What about vote banks? Okay, and it will be expensive. So यूरोपियन मिलिट्री कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स आर क्लियर विनर्स. इस टाइम सबसे ज़्यादा खुश जो हैं वो है मिलिट्री कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स जो वेपन्स बना रहे हैं, राइट. हु आर द लूजर्स? जस्ट हाउ मच डैमेज विल दिस रीआर्ममेंट again increasing your weapons? So again, after the Cold War ended, there was this policy that was popularized by the UN called disarmament, especially nuclear disarmament. तो अब यूएन भी बहुत चालाक, इन्होंने कहा देखो जो कंट्रीज बन गई न्यूक्लियर पावर वो तो बन गई, बट अदर्स प्लीज यूज न्यूक्लियर पावर ओनली फॉर peaceful purposes. Don't make more nuclear weapons. So this was called disarmament, right? Not using nuclear power for weapons, creating weapons. So now I am saying that there will be a rearmament and the potential for a new multi-front Cold War. What will that do to the global economy? Indian stock markets, they have been, you've seen what has been happening since December. So what will happen to the global economy? What new alliances will form? कैसा होगा world order अब? Right? Okay. Let's come to the next slide. If you have any queries, you can always ask in the chat box. Otherwise, read away. Yeah. Read? So see, this is something that we already guessed. Yes, when I asked you, why do you think, why do consumers or businesses might think that the price increases will keep happening? Because of this retaliation, right? Those barriers, these what are, I mean, these tariffs are also a form of trade barriers only, no? So these barriers might keep escalating. Maybe they'll find some other trade barriers as well, not just tariffs, right? एक्सट्रीम फॉर्म क्या होता है? सैंक्शंस ही लगा दो कि इस कंट्री से हम लेंगे ही नहीं कुछ भी. दोज आर कॉल्ड सैंक्शंस. Okay. Some investors are already starting to worry about how bad an economic slowdown in the US could be. And while I think the author thinks it's too early to talk about a recession, the R word is being bandied about. What does this mean? The R word is being bandied about. It's being casually stated that, probably we are going to enter a recession. So to bandy about something is to casually mention something again and again. Right? However, now see the author's view. However, this classic recession warning was flashing red for 2 years until December without a recession. So what does the author think? What is the author's view on this? That, there will be a slowdown in the US? What does the author think? This may be a question in the exam. The author is saying, see, we don't know about the future, but this recession warning has been going on for 2 years now without a recession, right? So only time will tell us. Okay, so this is the last slide and let's finish this. Now, in the long run, there are bigger problems. Now, the author is again going to talk about the long run scenario, but about some bigger problems. Read away. Let me know once you finish. So this bit is related to economics and finance. Red. Okay. So, I mean, in terms of word count, also this was higher, right? And there is also a bit of understanding between various cause effect relationships, right? Uh, what does it mean when countries have high debt? Processing that is required here, right? So, Europe's governments are already heavily indebted. So, it's not just people who borrow money, governments also borrow money. When they feel that they need money for the country's development but they don't have enough money, they'll borrow it. Right? So, see, even before spending on military, they are already in debt, and probably they'll borrow more. This is what is mentioned here, that they're trying to raise billions of euros for military spending. So that means they'll come even more in debt, right? The US is on what's politely called an unsustainable fiscal trajectory. Politely called. So the author is being slightly sarcastic here. The author feels that there should be a term graver than this, right? So, unsustainable fiscal means related to government's earnings. I mean, not really earnings, revenue. Government's revenue. गवर्नमेंट का रेवेन्यू क्या होता है, जो हमसे वो टैक्सेस कलेक्ट करती है. ओके. एंड गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग. सो fiscal is a word that is related to that. It means government's revenue, taxes, etc. So it's on an unsustainable fiscal trajectory. It's on a very unsustainable fiscal path, right? Probably it's spending more and getting much less. So that's why it is borrowing to finance this deficit. Okay, search about fiscal deficit. You should even know what India's fiscal deficit is for your PIs, right? Debt rising forever with no prospect of reining it in, right? So when we rein something in, absolutely, Light has already mentioned it, that a horse has reins. So when you rein something, you try to control it, you try to leash it. So we are unable to control debt, it's just rising like anything, right? So this is for the US. Higher taxes are politically challenging everywhere. Now, see, one way to raise money for military spending can also be from the public. No, you just increase taxes. Okay, in order to reduce debt, also, if you want to repay your lenders, just increase taxes. Logo se le lo, right? But that is politically very challenging. It's very contentious. We read the word earlier. While lower spending, अब गवर्नमेंट अगर अपनी स्पेंडिंग डिक्रीज कर देती है उस पर भी क्रिटिसिज्म होने लगता है बिकॉज इट्स गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग दैट ब्रिंग्स अबाउट अ लॉट ऑफ डेवलपमेंट इजंट इट सो लोअर स्पेंडिंग इज नेवर पॉपुलर इट्स वेरी रेयरली पॉपुलर and also hurts growth. So when the government reduces its spending, of course economic activity reduces, growth reduces, right? Less efficient global trade makes debt even harder to deal with. So less efficient global trade. Now the author is referring again to tariffs. Okay, tariffs decrease the efficiency of global trade, no? You have in a way increased prices because of tariffs. So global trade becomes inefficient and because of that economic activity कम हो जाएगी, आपका growth कम हो जाएगा, फिर आप कैसे debt से deal करोगे as a country? It makes debt even harder to deal with. Okay, so these are the bigger problems. You can't just one day decide to impose tariffs, right? Okay, when developed country governments borrow too much, investors flee their bonds and yields rise. What does this mean? Investors flee their bonds and yields rise. Bonds are the government bonds. Okay, so government debt कैसे raise करती है? Government debt raise करती है by issuing bonds to the public or even to other bigger players, other countries को भी कर सकते हैं issue, right? So अब अगर गवर्नमेंट बोरो करे जा रही है so investors might feel no that it will never repay them. Will you buy such a product then? If you are an investor, will you buy such bonds? If you feel that this government has borrowed too much, you will never invest in their bonds. You'll feel, oh, it will never repay my money. Let me. So investors, they abandon their bonds. They sell their bonds. They invest in something else. And as a result, the interest rate that the government has to pay on those bonds, गवर्नमेंट पैसा ले रही है मार्केट से तो गवर्नमेंट को उस पर इंटरेस्ट देना पड़ेगा ना. सो इंटरेस्ट रेट्स एकदम से राइज हो जाते हैं जो गवर्नमेंट को देने हैं लोगों को, राइट? सो द यील्ड्स राइज. Yes, absolutely, TP. The investors will mass sell the bonds. That's fleeing the bonds, right? And as a result, yields rise. So the interest rate that it has to pay rises. Imagine a country is already in so much debt. Debt अपना principal देने के तो पैसे नहीं और interest rate भी उतना एकदम से increase हो गया, right? So that is what Europe found in the 2010-12 Eurozone crisis. Read a bit about it. You all might have been young when the crisis happened. So read a bit about it, what it was, right? And Britain rediscovered in 2022. So this happened in Britain as well recently under here today, gone tomorrow Prime Minister Liz Truss. Okay, so she was the PM for a very, very brief while. The solution for many countries after the Second World War was financial repression. So after Second World War, what countries used to do? They used to practice capital controls, right? Financial repression. Interest rates को वो artificially low रखते थे कि हम इतना ही पे करेंगे, right? They didn't let the market decide this. Okay, they used to keep it artificially low. And there were always these lock-in periods for investors that if you have invested in this country, you can't, let's say, withdraw your money before 2 years, before 3 years, before 5 years. So they used to have capital controls to prevent investors from taking their money out of the country while using inflation to whittle away, to chip away the value of the debt. Who will tell me this? Virtual chocolate to the person who tells me the meaning of this. Using inflation to chip away the value of the debt. Yes. Fastest fingers first. कौन बताएगा मुझे? Countries, a country using inflation. That means it, yes. So basically, it used to keep prices in its economy high. It used to support inflationary conditions कि prices को rise होने दो products के. Because if the prices rise, let's say as an investor you invested 100 rupees. At that point, they could buy one packet of bread. Okay, when as an investor in 2001, you invested in a particular country. Now we are in 2025 and your 100 rupees can buy only 2 slices of bread. इतनी इन्फ्लेशन हो गई है इकोनॉमी में, राइट? तो ब्रेड का प्राइस एकदम से बहुत बढ़ गया, लेट्स से 1000 रुपीज हो गया है. सो योर 100 rupees are worth so less. It will be easy for the country now to repay your 100 rupees. That's what they used to do. Okay, so people suffered as a result, right? If you are maintaining inflationary conditions in your country, people will suffer, right? So this is what used to happen after World War II, but it was not sustainable. Economy के लिए sustainable नहीं था, country के लिए sustainable नहीं था. So as a result, these controls were removed, right? We are a long way from such capital controls happening again. We are a long way from Western capital controls. But things are moving fast. How bad could it get? How to protect against these risks? Right? So these are the questions that the author leaves us with. Things are moving fast. How bad could it get? How to protect against these risks? So it's written to, in a way, inform investors of what is happening, right? And what it means for their money. That's the idea behind this article, don't you think? Yes, Venezuelan crisis. You can there's a documentary on this, TP. I don't remember the name. I think YouTube पर है. Very interesting documentary. I think you should watch it. Okay. Also, another thing, you can also read a bit about China, because China also manages its interest rates, right? And उसको भी difficulty होती है अब, now that so much money is kind of coming and going out of the economy, right? So see, you can read a bit about how they do it, right? And this was our article. I hope it helped you to understand and contextualize how politics affects economics, and also vice versa. Economics affects politics. We are preferring butter to guns. So far, that's what had been happening. Okay, so the first question is this. According to the passage, how is the rise in global tariffs likely to impact the Federal Reserve's decision-making process? Let me see what you say. Yeah. Okay. All right. So since we had discussed this in detail, right, I am hoping, yes, that everybody has understood. It has to be B. Yes, I even presented these two scenarios before you, that this is what a central bank, these are the choices that a central bank faces. Okay, and the author ended up on this question that, the Fed will be in a dilemma. Will it be really willing to cut? Even as tariffs push inflation up. So Fed will be in a dilemma. Interest rate cut karu ya inflation manage karu? And you're absolutely right. B, Bangalore is the answer. So in the exam, you have to notice this. Right now, we discuss this. Okay. Let's see this. What does the author suggest about the future of European military spending? Okay. All right. Okay. A lot of you think D. A and C you have eliminated. Absolutely. Perfect, Pritikana. A and C had to be eliminated. Okay. So, yes, the choice is between B and D. Now, um, is this bit, speculated in the passage that, Europe has got the message? Politicians there are saying we can't rely just on NATO, right? This is mentioned. And it is also mentioned that European Commission and Germany, they are trying to raise billions of euros for new military spending. So these bits are mentioned in the passage. Now let's look at this. We have mentioned this as well, so far we have had this policy of prioritizing guns or prioritizing butter to guns, right? However, when we say Europe may prioritize defense spending at the expense of economic growth and technological development, don't you think it's very specific? Economic growth and technological development. See, if we go back to the passage, uh, this particular area, just a second, let me delete. Yeah. Uh, since the Berlin Wall fell, we have lived through this for almost half a century, right? Now it says with the rise of China and with the US no longer seen as a reliable ally, guns will again take priority. Okay, right. But does that, can you conclude from this that because guns are taking a priority, it will be at the expense of economy and tech development? That they will suffer. So the passage has not been this specific, whereas the passage has mentioned both these things, right? So we will prefer option B because it is milder and it does not talk about something so specific that is not there in the passage, tech development. That's why B is going to be our answer and not D. Make sense? Why B and not D? Yes. Absolutely, Pritikana. So this becomes alien, this becomes out of scope, right? It's the kind of option where part of the option is absolutely alien. Okay, yes, NATO. But NATO is mentioned in the passage. See, we discussed it. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Yeah? Okay. All right. So yes, there were just these two questions. I felt that I had to explain so much in this passage that I think we'll answer various questions in advance, right? But in your exam, you could get questions. For instance, what is the author's take on this recession, on a recession in the US in the future? That could become an MCQ. And apart from that, there could be questions from this area. What does the author imply by a new multi-front cold war, right? There could be a question that how would, let's say, how can you weaken this argument that cutting interest rates might also lead to a reduction in the damage to stocks, and there could be questions regarding that. So in your exam there could be such questions. uh, right now my focus was on explaining stuff to you. In our RC sessions our focus is on attempting questions and eliminating options, right? uh, okay, your homework. Yes, so I think I've already said this. Read more about these organizations, NATO, read more about Cold War, fall of the USSR, right? How did that happen? Who played a major role, etc., etc. Disarmament policy, especially nuclear disarmament, how India again just denied being a part of various treaties that wanted it to follow nuclear disarmament. The reason APJ Abdul Kalam is also famous, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, बहुत interesting stories है ये. I think you should read about them. Right? Thank you, Pritikana. That means a lot. Now I will see you on Monday on YouTube, right, at 6 p.m. So I've decided to change the time of our YT sessions as well so that it's all aligned. तो अब मैं आपको हमेशा Monday to Thursday 6 p.m. मिलूंगी. Okay. Some of the students commented that it's more convenient for them to join a bit later. That's why this decision. Okay. And also you don't have to remember different times for different portals. तो अब हर जगह हम 6 p.m. मिलेंगे Monday to Thursday. All right. I hope this session helped you. Thank you so much for attending. I love explaining and I love to have an audience. So thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Yes, self-professing effect. Read more about it. Yes, TP, batch 5, R5 is what I plan to give sessions in. Right? Welcome. Bye.